the less than honorable.
Good evening. It is 4:54 p.m. and we're calling to order the special workshop for the budget season. Call for a quorum.
Can I have everyone turn on their mics really quick?
Sorry.
Thank you. All right. Mayor Pro Tem Fitzpatrick? Here. Councilmember Bowman?
Discuss later.
Councilmember Goolsby?
Here.
Councilmember Putt? Here. Councilmember Ball?
With apologies, late here.
Councilmember Vaughn?
Discuss.
And Mayor Maxwell, we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. Need an approval for Councilmember Vaughn and Bolton to dismiss them because of we knew that Councilman Vaughn was not going to be here today. That was already known and approved because of the internet outages. Councilmember Bowman could not attend. So we do have a quorum. That's the reason why we're only the 5 of us tonight.
Move to excuse.
Second. Call for a vote.
Councilmember Goolsby?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Fitzpatrick?
Aye.
Councilmember Putt?
Aye.
Councilmember Ball?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, we're good. This is a special meeting for the budget. We are going to take the next one for citizens to be heard. I've only got one person to sign up for that, and that's Mr. Ken Taylor. If you'd like to come up.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have something short for you. In fact, I might just hand it out. It'll make it easier. And instead of making a speech, I'll just read it.
Okay, sir. You may.
Okay, this is about the budget 24-25. Excuse me. As you embark upon the budget process, you will find a lot of numbers and other data. The budget offers you a load of opportunity to wallow in the minutiae. I would encourage you instead to take the view from 30,000 feet. Please keep in mind that the budget is first and foremost a planning document. The budget is where goals, vision, and aspirations meet reality. The budget is where ideas are actually implemented. So, as you proceed through the process, I would urge you to stay focused upon matters that are of strategic importance to the community. The big picture, the long term. If you don't do it, who will? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I applaud your initiative with that and true advice from having done hundreds and hundreds of budgets over the years.
Thank you.
Special meeting now. I turn it over to Ms. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to give a few remarks. First of all, let's always start with thanks, right? Because we're always thankful for all the work that people put into the budget process. So I'll start with all of our department heads and their respective staff who have spent months getting cost estimates, figuring out what they need, fine-tuning their budget. And I appreciate all the work that they do. It is a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth at times, and it is a little bit of guesswork too. And so there's always a feeling of uneasiness in that when we start presenting that to you. But I really appreciate all the work and the effort that they put into it. Also, a huge thank you to Christine Green, our finance director, who has taken all of those individual budgets and heard the preponderance of wailing and gnashing of teeth from everybody, and has assured us that this is a regular process. We get through it every year and everything's going to be okay. So thank you to Christine. And then, of course, I'd like to thank the council members, even Mr. Vaughn and Ms. Bowman, who are not here, because we set up a time for you to have one-on-one sessions. And this is the first time that I remember that every council member participated. And so it is very beneficial for the staff. I want the residents to know that you budgeted your time to give consideration to the budget for the city. And I think it speaks volumes about the care and the interest that each of you have, not only in the staff, but in the services that we provide to our residents as well. Overview tonight, so we do have a lot, but I think we can get through it in a very timely manner. So first, we're going to have the Sarah rate report, and I'll introduce them in a moment. Then Grady Reed with HDR is going to give your water, sewer, stormwater rate study that he has done and the 5-year CIP for those departments. Then we're going to stay on utility and stormwater, and we're going to go through those department budgets while it's still fresh in our mind. Then we're going to do debt service. Then we're going to go through capital improvement programs ×3 because multiple departments have those. All this was in your budget. And then we're going to do special revenue funds, which are the restricted uses. When we get to that point and we feel like we've exhausted you enough, we're going to allow you to take a break. And I'm guessing at this point, everybody's going to need a break, and so we do have refreshments for everybody, and we hope you imbibe. So after we have the give me a break, give me a break, give me a Kit Kat break, we're going to come back and we're going to do the general fund, and then we're going to do the golf course fund. And after that, we're over. So same process as we've already done. Maybe just some general comments from me as we had met with all of you. You've given us some great direction, great feedback. We really appreciate the fact that it was clear that everybody had read the budget and had questions ready when they kind of came to see us. So with that in mind, what it provided for myself and Christine is now we understand better individually how you read the budget and how you interpret the budget by the questions that you asked and the clarifications. So when we move forward with your final budget document, you should expect some wording change so that we can make it non-accounting language so we know that you completely understand what we're saying. We may add some pages, we may delete some pages based on your feedback. And then we're probably going to reformat it for some better comprehension prior to giving it back to you into your hands on the 31st of July. When you get your 31st of July, it's going to be the full budget packet with all the stuff that comes before it and all the stuff that comes after it. So you'll have that, and we'll give you, again, about a week or so to go through that before you have your next meeting. So what are our expectations tonight? So for staff, we want to solidify council's understanding of the operations and the processes that we go through. As Mr. Ken Taylor had indicated, that's about a 30,000 foot level, right? We also want to understand or solidify your understanding of the capital improvements, capital purchases that may not be at 30,000 foot level because that's really where we have the most control to make changes. So let's go 20,000 feet at that level. And then what we're going to be asking from you tonight is to provide us some general feedback that you would like us to take back, and any other changes that you might have thought of since we met with you individually that you think you might want to see in the budget to make the process or the actual budget document easier for you. And then let's just put the big key, I call it the big Q. This is the question everybody wants to know, and that is what is our anticipated tax rate? Well, that is a guesstimate at this point, as we have discussed. The actual certified tax rolls do not come out until July 25th. So when you get your July 31st budget packet, we're going to have that budget and tax rate information in there for you to consider. So what you need to remember is that right now we know that we are making guesstimates on what we think the tax rate is going to be based on the current budget that we're going to discuss tonight. We've had 3 people give us guesstimates. I always remind them that, yes, you can do a guesstimate, but the actual tax calculation worksheet is 8 to 10 pages long. Meaning, when we get it, there's not a lot of guesswork in it. It is an independent third-party organization that calculates that 8 to 10 page worksheet for us. They then, within their organization, have another person double check it, and then they're going to send it back to Universal City, and we're going to double check their numbers. So the numbers that we're going to be providing you are going to be from that budget calculation worksheet. When we get to the August 6th meeting, right, rubber's going to meet the road on that evening. That is when we are going to do our tax rate presentation, and we're going to be giving you proposed tax rates for consideration, August 6th. At that juncture, on August 6th, you should be providing your staff with a little more granular detail on what you think you want the tax rate to be. And with that, we will give you some general understanding if that's the rate you want to go, what we may have to cut from the budget to make that. And so that'll be a very important meeting. It will be at a regular council meeting. And so we just ask that you be prepared to have those discussions that evening. All right, so let's just go ahead and start out with a little bit of fun. I'm going to call it the doodle game. So the time now is 5:02 p.m. And so somewhere where audience play along too, doodle down on a piece of paper or wherever you want what time you think this meeting is going to end this evening. And then what we will do is once the mayor hits the gavel and says this meeting is adjourned, we can go around and have discussions with each other about what time that we put down, and then we'll find out who came the closest to figuring out what time we're leaving this evening. So with that, we are going to go ahead and turn it over to Rick Tressler from Sarah. He has with him this evening Katie Overstreet and Liana, thank you, Nava. They are also with San Antonio River Authority, and they've already gone through, started doing their rate study, so they're going to give us an indication of what they're proposing and sending to their board, and then we use that data with Grady Reed to go in and figure out what our city rates are going to be for the upcoming year. So with that, I will turn it over to Rick. And who has the slide? Maribel, are you doing it from back there?
I can.
Oh, there we go, thank you. So that you can, is it on? That's the question. Yes, it is. There you go. Thank you, Bill.
Good evening. My name is Rick Tressler. I'm representing the San Antonio River Authority. We appreciate the opportunity to be your wastewater provider for the city of Universal City. Today we have a brief presentation to kind of summarize where we are from a rate perspective, and I'll try to do my part to hit the number on time we'll get out of here. So, but anywhere along the presentation, if you have any questions, please stop me and I'll try to expand and answer as best I can. If I can, I know our team will be able to support that. Where am I pointing at?
At the street right here.
You might need it. Okay. If you recall, last year we were here and we talked a little bit about getting some external consultants to help us with our analysis of our system, to look at our rate model, also to do an evaluation of our capital improvement program, because those are big drivers to the rates that we charge our retail and wholesale customers. So tonight we just wanted to provide a little bit of a response to what we found out during that study. And we do have a full report. If that's helpful, we can provide that. I think we've shared that with the staff and have kind of talked about some of the recommendations on the next steps that we see through that process. But I'll highlight here that our current rate model meets industry standard. For those that aren't aware, we do have two systems that we operate at San Antonio River Authority: the Solid Trio system, which is serving Universal City, and the Sarah Martinez Creek system, which serves customers outside of your CCN. And so that model, like I said, does meet industry standards and continues to be set on the fixed and variable rate components that we'll talk about a little bit tonight. Another thing that we talked about is the potential combination of the systems. One thing that they recognize is the complexity of having two models. The inputs to both systems do have overlap, and if there's an opportunity to gain efficiencies and even have an impact on the rates that we charge our customers to make sure that we're good stewards of those funds, is something that we'll expand and be looking into over the next fiscal year. The use of winter average in conjunction with flow verification is a common practice of cost of service funding. What that means is currently what we do is we collect a winter average to help inform the rates we'll be charging. So that's done over a 3-month period. What this recommendation is saying is that they have seen others be successful and have flow monitoring, so where we would put flow sensors to kind of actually calibrate the winter average, the amount that we're estimating to collect over the period versus the actual flow that's arriving towards the plant. So they think that that would help us validate the actual flow and help us inform some of our future capital projects and capacity needs in the future. From a funding strategy standpoint, you all know that have been on this council for a little bit, the staff. Mr. Taylor also knows it very well, that we've been on a path over several years where we've been trying to stabilize the rate. We've had double-digit increases for a number of years to help us be able to provide the services that we do. But we've taken that responsibility very seriously and have tried to do things that have kind of managed that rate. And we have, beginning last year, been able to kind of come under that double-digit increase in this last year's rate setting process. Things that they've offered, they've kind of recognized as creating a rate stabilization fund that's, kind of a reserve that would be able to allow us the flexibility to inject rate reserves to help stabilize the percentage increase that we would pass on to our wholesale customers. So something to look at in terms of, do we need to set aside a rate reserve to help us as we manage those annually? Explore funding strategies for future capital projects. This is a short way of saying is, do we take on more debt versus fund it with cash? And so we've tried to have a strategy where we've tried to minimize the debt that we've put on the system. And the way we've done that is try to accumulate cash to complete major significant projects for renewal and new infrastructure in the system. And so they feel like we have a little bit of capacity to take on more debt versus cash fund some of these initiatives. And so that's really more of a philosophical approach that we'll talk about at a staff level. And then the last is this depreciation and immediate R&R. So we do have a renewal and replacement fund that we do collect to help provide funding for capital renewals such as vehicles and equipment. They're also kind of looking at it from a depreciation standpoint. If we collect a little bit more, that offsets the depreciation. Hopefully, in theory, you'll have that cash available when it comes time to renew. So just a lot of this is about setting aside money, which obviously you've got to collect money to set aside. So we're trying to find the balance of setting aside too much money and increasing rates, and those things kind of have to work hand in hand. Any questions on that study and any of the results from that? Okay. The next slide will show you what we typically like to do is show you, here's what we were saying last year. The red box around FY24 is the rate that we presented to you all last year. It was on average an 8.98% increase across 5,000 gallons, which is the winter average number that I spoke a little bit about. And what we were projecting in FY25 was a 5%. We knew that there would be some level of increase because we continue to see costs rise and cost of services is not getting any cheaper. And so I'm sure you're seeing that, and you'll talk a lot about that, I suspect. So we had kind of thrown that 5% number out there. The next slide that I'll show is kind of where we are, what we presented to the staff. And so that final column there in FY25, we're projecting a 7.8% rate across the wholesale customers for the solid feeder system. On average, that's a $2.35 increase for ratepayers for wholesale services. So that's not the rate that you'll see for your citizens. That's the rate that we pass on to the cities that then collect their rate and set that rate separately aside for the citizens. And so, the next slide. And from additionally, for the proposed rates, we are looking to see an increase on the connection fees, and so that's not something that's paid by your ratepayers. That is something that we collect from those that develop and connect into our system, and so that rate will be proposed at $5,000 going to $6,000, which would be consistent with the rate that we're charging currently for the Cerro Martinez system. Additionally, we do have rates that we set for all other users, which would be commercial ratepayers, not residential homeowners in your community. That rate is being proposed to go up to $6.14, and then the retail services, those are outside of the wholesale rate, would be moving from $7.20 to $9.04. And so here's kind of the slide that has typically gotten the most conversation. Which you can kind of see here. Here are the wholesale customers that we're supporting in the solid treated wastewater system. You'll see the first line there is for Universal City. So last year, you'll see FY24, there was a winter average of 4,988 gallons. That's increased slightly to 5,000, which is actually the rate that the amount that we based the average rate on. So you'll see that your changes from the proposed charge is exactly what we presented to you all in the previous slide. So as you can see, there's a 7.9% increase that we're looking to support. To expand a little bit about beyond that, obviously we've seen increasing costs in labor. That continues to be a challenge for us, getting skilled operators to maintain the plants, maintaining professional staff that also support our operations. I'm sure that's something that you are seeing in your daily lives and through the city as well. Additionally, the cost of services and the utilities that we see in terms of electricity or water that we're, paying for is going up. And so we've done, we think what we can to kind of manage that and do the best we can to maintain a stable rate. But I will say, as we go into next year, we'll continue to be looking at the model and seeing how we can incorporate the things that we discussed through the Victorville business. And just to kind of give a little bit of an overview for those that aren't completely familiar with the plant that services the wastewater needs in the city, we just did complete an expansion from 5.83 million gallons per day to 7.33 million gallons per day. And so that was one project that we issued $25 million in debt. So kind of to the point, we came back a few years back and talked a little bit about needing to do this major capital renewal because the plant had seen many years without major renewal of infrastructure. And we also saw, as the cities that we support have grown, we needed additional capacity. And so that plant is nearing completion. We are substantially complete as of this month, and then we anticipate being final completion in August of 2024. And just a reminder, this is a total project. In addition, we did have some cash that we supported this project with, in addition to the $25 million in debt that we issued. As we move into the next couple of fiscal years, we did capture a lot of the renewal of the plant, but there are still some things that we're not able to fit into the project. So we had to value engineer some of the improvements outside of the project that we're completing at this point in time. So we still are looking to do some improvements to clarifiers for the plant. There are some electrical improvements that are still remaining that did not fit into the original scope. And then we are looking at a facility plan to address kind of the growth and kind of how we renew the plant infrastructure for wastewater services. Additionally, for those that have toured the plant, I know we've taken several people out there. The building does need significant improvements, so we are currently in the process of coordinating with general contractors to get this to upgrade some of the facility infrastructure that supports the plant operations. And then additionally, we've been coordinating on how we address some of the flood resiliency. There are potential access issues that we're trying to address as we've had some master planning and other engineers look at the site. As water does pool on that side, there are potential issues of being able to access the infrastructure, so we'll be looking at that in the future as well. So one thing I just wanted to expand on is kind of a special initiative that I think is important for everyone to be aware of, is that we will we've been talking with our utilities task force, and the board members on that task force have directed us to kind of move forward towards this flow monitoring initiative, which will help really treat that capacity and the amount of flow that's arriving at the plant. So the staff has been working towards identifying 39 retail monitors that will assist in some of the capacity monitoring, and then 36 wholesale monitors. So that would be the parts and service, the outfalls that come from the Universal City. And so we completed that solicitation, and we're looking to have these monitors installed by October 1st, which is our new fiscal year. So we're hoping to use that as a full year period as we kind of test and we start to get some information on that, and that will help us grow our next year's rate setting process. And so the next steps as it relates to our rate and kind of how we communicate with our board, we've already presented to them our preliminary projections. We're going through the same budget process that you all are. Our board does not meet in July, but in August we'll be presenting them kind of our new resources and all of our proposed rates and fees as we finalize our charges for services and our tax rate. We will present our final recommendation and take action on September 18th, and then those new rates will effect on October 1st. And so as part of this process, if you have any input or things that you would like for us to share with our board as they're making those decisions, I could collect that from you, or you can provide that to staff of course as well. Unless there's any questions, that's all I have for you tonight.
Any questions?
Yes, sir. With regard to the flow monitoring project for 2025, again, I'm interpreting you to say that these are Universal City flow monitoring areas. So that would be 75 areas in Universal City.
So there's 36 total monitors, and that would be servicing all of the solid trio system. And so that would be monitors in Universal City, Converse, and Live Oak.
Okay.
Not specifically Universal.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I've got frustration on the EDUs, but that's a little bit later, and I'll just email you and if you can harass him with mine. The EDUs, they're going up from 5,000 per EDU to 6,000 per EDU. What is an average restaurant? I'm gonna see 25, 30 people in my restaurant. Is that 3 EDUs?
Ooh, I don't know, off the top of my head on the multiplier on a restaurant.
It's typically 2 EDUs. It's based on the size of the lateral. So if it's a just a typical restaurant in a service area, then it's 2 EDUs.
2 EDUs?
Yes, sir. And that's assuming it could be spread if it's in a shopping area. That could be spread across the whole development.
That's just one of those things that, as I look at the spread, at the worksheet and everything, and it's just like, if I try to have a larger restaurant or something like that, I'm looking at 4 or 5. If I'm looking at the worksheet at $6,000 versus $5,000, I know it's only $4,000, but I'm already paying $5,000. So it's just, I don't like paying EDUs, and I understand both sides. So I'm just trying to make sure that we're not crushing our new development with the EDUs.
Absolutely, and we didn't really dive into the variable and the fixed component of our rate, how we build that. The variable is really about the operation and maintenance of our plant. The fixed component is really what supports the major capital improvements like plant expansions, new clarifiers, et cetera. And so that exercise is really trying to find the balance of how do you collect revenue. Because at the end of the day, you've got a certain amount of dollars. And so that money either gets shifted to the commercial and the developer side, or it gets shifted to residential ratepayers. And so that's the balance that we've been trying to find.
And this is where I'm leaning on my city manager to really help me figure out which one's the best route to go. Because, again, do we want to crush our commercial? No. Do we want to crush our ratepayers? No.
Absolutely. We're not trying to crush anybody. Hopefully you've kind of learned that over the years. We've been trying to manage this.
Understand.
But happy to, if you've got ideas or suggestions for feedback, please share that and we'll take a look.
Just ask the mayor to give up his salary. We'll be in good shape.
Well, I don't know, too much would pay for that, right? In a voting game. That's a one-time charge, correct, in construction? I understand it's construction costs.
No, I had a church one time turn around and they were going to hit us for like 100 and something EDUs, and yeah, there was a whole issue with we didn't pay EDUs to begin with. And so in addition, there's some stupid number.
Yeah, happy to address some of those. Katie, our team works very closely with all the development in the area, and we can certainly respond as necessary.
So we know in the contract world, the worst thing you can get is a surprise, right? So we actually have by business type, retail, restaurant, retail, office, industrial, what they would anticipate in their one-time development fees, including permit. And so Michael and his office have all of those spreadsheets together. And so when somebody comes in and they're saying they're going to be considering a project in Universal City, we give them that information up front, so it is not a surprise to them.
Thank you. This is what I was going to ask her offline, because that's a deep subject.
Absolutely.
Mr. Ball, yes.
Yes, given the fact that our winter rates were 5,000 compared to surrounding cities, either for you or the city manager, what is the proportion of rates for commercial versus residential that accounts for that 5,000? It's actually significantly higher than Commerce and White Oak, which has actually, a greater population density.
So this is the residential, just so you understand, the 5,000. They don't do the same comparison for commercial. But we also have in Universal City allowed houses. They have much larger lots and are bigger houses than they do in Live Oak and Coppers. And so that can attribute to it. The other thing is that it all depends on how much people want to fill their pool and water their lawn. Those are really the two big factors in determining what the water usage is in the home.
He asked the question that I had, so thank you. Anything else? Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks so much for your time. Good night.
Thank you, George. All right, the next item we have up is Mr. Grady Reed with HDR. I know that for some of you who've been around for a while, he's a very familiar face. very familiar with the Universal City budget process, our system, Randy and Randy's projects and how Randy thinks. And so Grady has been working on this presentation for quite some time, and so we'll let him go through that. And then at the end, if you have questions, we'll be happy to answer them. I would like to make one comment. So there's some paper rustling that's going on somebody's microphone. If we could move the microphone away from the paper, I think it would be advantageous for the audience. Also, several of you are leaning back in your chairs or speak very quietly. I know when the air conditioner kicks on, I can barely hear you, and I'm this close. So I'm going to make the assumption that people in the audience cannot hear as well either. So let's everybody speak up if we can. Thank you. Go ahead, Grady.
All right, thank you, and good evening, Mayor and Council. Like I said, my name is Grady Reed. I'm a Senior Project Manager with HDR. We've been invited back to complete the city's rate study, annual rate updates for, at this point, it's probably 10 years or so, or maybe even longer. So we appreciate that opportunity to continue working with the city. I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on both the water and wastewater utility, and we'll talk about those, and then we'll jump from the water and wastewater utility into stormwater. So if we look at and some of these you'll hear a little about in more detail as you go through the budget. But on the water side, we're looking at some increased expenses associated with Carrizo Aquifer purchases, and then also going out and acquiring additional Edwards Aquifer rights. That's a significant jump from last year's budget to the prospective budget for fiscal year 2025. And we do expect those expenses to stay where they are, so we don't expect them to say jump in 2025 and then go back down. There are some other ongoing projects that are being funded through current bonds that have already been issued. Those are associated with sewer line rehabs, the well number 11 storage tank, and some land acquisition associated with Centerbrook. How we capture those within the rate modeling process is for any debt that has already been issued, we look at what those actual debt service payments are, and so we capture those as an expense to the water and wastewater utility through that means. Other capital projects coming up, there are 3 additional tanks that are being repainted for plants number 8, 9, and 10. We have assumed that those are going to be cash funded from cellular water tank revenue. So how we have this modeled is there's a revenue within your budget that is associated with renting space on top of water towers for cellular services. We take that revenue, we then put that revenue, we basically transfer that revenue back out of the utility into a special fund we call it the tank repainting fund, where it kind of accumulates, and then as these tanks need to be repainted, we're pulling from that fund at that time to repaint those tanks. We do also have additional money that's been included for our additional water rehab projects coming up. That was $250,000 in the past. For 2025, we've increased that to $300,000, and then we're increasing that by 5% a year. So by the time we get to 2029, we're cash funding about $365,000 worth of water rehab projects. One of the big changes is kind of centers around this public works yard capital improvement program. In the budgets and in the rate model, we've included $150,000 of cash in 2025 only for that project. In past rate models, we've kind of always had $150,000. It's actually $300,000 total. We have it split $150,000 into water and $150,000 into wastewater. We've always in the past we've included that being transferred over and again into a kind of a separate fund every year. In this model, we only have it in 2025, and then we've modeled a $6 million debt offer being issued in fiscal year 2026 for the remainder of that project. That $6 million debt, we've modeled those payments as being $488,000 a year, roughly, assuming about a 4.75% interest rate and a 20-year term. Again, what those actual payments are going to be would be decided at that time. I'm not a bond counsel person, so we just kind of made our guesstimate as well as based on what we know at this point. kind of related to that, and so that would be an increase in expenses of $480,000 a year associated with that. However, you do have payments of about $360,000 that's associated with a bond that was issued, this year 2012 bond. Those end this upcoming fiscal year, so those will not be there in 2026. And then again, we have been budgeting expenses, cash expenses of $300,000 combined between water and wastewater. That would also end with this debt issue. So you're losing, all told, you're losing a little over $660,000 worth of expenses, and you're gaining $488,000 with the new debt issue. On the wastewater side, again, Sarah's kind of stole some of my thunder on this, so I'll be brief here. But your Sarah wholesale residential charges are increasing by 7.9%. That's a little bit higher than what we had planned. We had planned for 5% in 2025. And then we have modeled out through the rest of our planning period continued increases of 5% for those years, for the remaining years. On the commercial side, the rate increase is 5% this upcoming year. And again, in future years, we're generally modeling that as 5% or less for those commercial rate increases. So all told, your Sarah treatment expenses, they're expected to increase by about $366,000 between fiscal year 2025 and 2029. And most of that is associated with their rate increases. Some of that increase in treatment expenses associated with growth as well. On the CCMA side, their treatment expenses over that same time period are expected to only increase by about 10%. Again, that's somewhat due to their rate increases as well as customer growth. We are projecting that CCMA's rate increases are projected to be about 2% a year. We have included money for, just like we did for water, we've also included on the wastewater side for wastewater rehab projects, $300,000 in 2025, and then we're growing that 5% a year throughout the rest of the planning period. And again, just as well with just the same as we were doing with water, we do have $150,000 in there for the public works yard capital improvement project, and that is in 2025 only. After that, we're assuming that the debt's being issued to fund the remainder of that project, and so that expense goes away. So if we look at what your water and wastewater CIP is, and most of this I've already gone over before, but you can see the public works yard capital improvements, the cash of $150,000 on both the water and the wastewater side. Again, that goes away because we're assuming that in 2026 there'll be a $6 million debt issue that you can see in the second line there to fund the remainder of that project. The three tank repaintings there, the $209,000 in 2025, $200,000 in 2027, and then $245,000 in 2028. Again, those are projected to be come from a tank repainting fund, not being cash funded directly out of the operations maintenance fund. The only projects that we have cash funded aside from the public works yard capital improvement project are those water rehab projects. And again, you can see both on the water and wastewater, we have $300,000 in 2025, and then we're basically increasing that 5% a year. So the rate changes, we're recommending basically a 2% across the board rate increase for both water and wastewater. That would be both the demand charge and the volume rate. Our projected rate increase from last year was 2%, so we're right where we thought we would be, even with some of the increased expenses. Always like to asterisk this and say the future rate increases are still going to be needed. I think those are likely going to be between 2% and 4% based on just what we know. Again, that's always subject to change, but just kind of looking at where you are now, we don't see your utility system it's relatively stable. You're not seeing leaps and bounds in growth. You don't have, where you have some increasing costs due to going out and acquiring some additional groundwater. You don't have huge multi-million-dollar projects to try to bring in your water supply. So you're stable, which is kind of a good place to be. We have always tried in the past to increase your rates a little bit every year, and taking that approach instead of trying to always hold off on not do any rate increases, and then you have a big catch up at some point in the future. So with that rate increase, that would mean an average residential bill, someone that's using 6,000 gallons of water and 5,000 gallons of sewer, would go up $1.89 a month. Again, we've modeled future 3% rate increases. The bars, the dark bars down at the bottom, are operations and maintenance expenses, which is most of your utility fund budget. The lighter blue on top of that is your existing debt service. And you can see that's a little bit smaller in 2026 as we retire existing debt, but then we're replacing a portion of that with new debt service also in 2026 with a $6 million debt issue. So if we look at your kind of reserves, the goal is to keep 6 months worth of cash on hand within the water and wastewater system. Last year was a better year financially than what we had predicted, likely just due to it's dry. People are somewhat trying to water their lawns, even with some water use restrictions. And so you generated a little bit more revenue than what we had thought. I always say the best case for your water utility is when it's dry enough that people have hope that they can keep their yards alive. And that's kind of where we've somewhat been. So with that said, we have you ending 2025 with about 7 months of reserves on hand. And then even with our 3% rate increases, we're going to kind of pull that down over time. I think that you've heard me say before, because sometimes the question is asked, well, if we're above our current reserve requirements, then why are we doing any rate increases at all? And the idea is that we really want to have that dash line. If we're going to try to pull that dash line down towards our goal, we want to do that in a controlled manner. And so the way that we do that is by still having rate increases, but our rate increases aren't necessarily keeping up with our full, with the same rate that our expenses are increasing, if that makes sense. So we're drawing the reserves down, but we're trying to do that in a controlled manner, where if that dash line gets too steep, then you're going to see a much larger rate increase in a year that we need to level that off to hit your reserve requirement. On the stormwater side, we did a 5% rate increase last year, and we've done some other past increases, including a large rate increase in 2023, which I believe was 15%. And that has helped provide the utility with more funds for just ongoing capital projects. As was mentioned before, these capital projects are not getting any cheaper. They tend to only get more expensive as we go. The goal has always been to fund about $270,000 per year of those projects. And then we're going to grow that to $335,000 in 2029. Again, just kind of realizing that these capital projects tend to get more expensive through time, and nothing is unfortunately getting cheaper. With that said, our projected capital spending in 2025 is actually $960,000, but that includes 2 projects, Oak Meadows and Persia, which were budgeted for fiscal year 22 and 24, but those funds were not spent. So what we see is while we had set rates as though those projects were going to be constructed in 2024, that money was going to be going out the door. Since that money did not go out the door, that's reflected in your fund balance within your stormwater fund. Really outside of your capital spending, most other costs for the utility are stable. There's a little bit of an exception to that, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. So on the stormwater side, the good news is that we're not recommending any rate increase for 2025. And again, that's kind of in line with where we were last year. Again, I will asterisk that don't think that this necessarily means that we will not have any stormwater rate increases in the future. Those may be needed just as inflation increases and those expenses increase. So this is kind of the same idea of summarizing where you're at on your stormwater fund. Again, you can see in 2025 the expenditures are obviously a lot more than our revenue coming in, but that's because in a sense we're kind of catching up on a couple of projects that we had budgeted for 2024 that didn't happen. So now those expenses have been rolled over to 2025. Moving forward, we actually have your expenses being a little bit less than your revenue. That revenue line includes no additional rate increases on the stormwater fund. My understanding, and I guess this could be clarified as you go through your utility budget, but there was a little bit of a reallocation of staff outside of the stormwater fund into a different fund. And so that has actually caused your stormwater expenses to decrease slightly. So that could potentially help depending upon what these other expenses do in the future, and especially the capital side. If you may be able to go a few years without additional rate increases on stormwater. Again, if we look at your month's operating reserves, the goal here for stormwater is only 3 months instead of 6. And that's really just because your stormwater revenue coming in is much more stable revenue. We have a much better idea of what that revenue is going to be from a stormwater perspective. Whereas with the water and wastewater utility, it really kind of depends upon the weather, which obviously we can't forecast that a year in advance. So this shows a really healthy stormwater fund balance. We discussed this a little bit with staff, and again, there's really nothing we can do about those months operating reserves. We have no future rate increases in there. Whether this is going to actually happen or not, again, it really kind of depends on what that capital program is and what those actual costs of those projects come in. What this does show is that there could be some room in future years to cash fund additional projects if needed. There could be some additional cash funding to fund some of those projects without additional rate increases. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Yes, sir. With regard to the Persia project, if my recollection is correct, the budget more than doubled in that project. Is that correct?
I can speak to that. So our engineer's estimate when we were given that project was about $290,000, and then basically all they did was give us a cost estimate. We have now engaged in the engineering contract where they went out and started surveying, taking up other utilities, taking up the conflicts, and then now has revised the budget. When they revised the budget for now, it's at $635,000. So what we're going to do is we didn't release that project, which I anticipated doing for $290,000 this year. We're carrying that money forward to 2025, adding additional funding to fund that project in 2025.
Okay. So that first estimate and a current estimate that will be rolled into 2 years to soften the blow a little bit. In a quick summary, what is the work that will be done on the Persia project?
So in 2000, the Persia had one half of that street done with drainage. So from Choke to, I would say, the south side, heading south on that street, half of it was done. So now what prioritized was all the Parkview drainage projects. So that's, for years, we've been doing that one for 20 years, we did that project. Now that that one's completed, I'm focused on the Persia finished out. That was started in 2000. And so we're doing the other half of that horseshoe. So that will be the other half of the short horseshoe because Persia is going to be part of the street bond. So I'm trying to get all the utility work done that needs to get done before we come to the street project.
Okay. And Randy, while you're on the line there, since I'm new up here, the Public Works project, the $6 million project, exactly what does that entail?
So that is my old yard. So if you've been down to my yard for the cleanup,
Yeah.
that is the old, what we call the old yard. So that would be an expansion. We bought the property behind it several years ago. So we're going to expand that property to take in everything I got sitting outside, putting things under covers, putting everything into a warehouse. It's going to be like a big warehouse for all our materials to go indoors, instead of sitting outside. Because we're blowing up batteries. We're having our hydraulic hoses cracked. We got poly tanks that are exposed. So we got to start getting things under cover.
Okay, that clarifies a lot because I was concerned about how the property got rolled into a capital program and capital. This doesn't make sense. Thank you, Randy.
Yeah.
You haven't been doing this a long time. I remember when you and I worked great. So,
Any other questions?
I remember those good times too.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank y'all. Have a good evening.
Thank you. So the next step on the water, sewer, and stormwater is as we get into the August time period, we'll have the ordinances put together with Randy and Tina. They will get the ordinances together. We'll get those on the agenda for City Council to review and to approve. All of those new fees will take effect October 1st, which may or may not be your first billing cycle. Is that correct? They go into effect October 1st. You could actually not show up until your next billing cycle.
Actually in September, so it will change in September, so everybody's first.
Starts on October, thank you.
Those new rates.
So we'll have them to you in August with the rate changes, and then we can have this discussion all over again. All right, staying on schedule, we are going to go into the utility and stormwater budgets, and who is going to be presenting? Christine is pointing at Mateo, and Maribel is pointing at Randy and Athena, so we will let the three of them take it away. Go ahead, Mateo, you're first.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Speak
So,
up. Yeah, let's just grab it. Want to make sure everybody can use this.
all right, testing. All right. Good evening, all. We're going to jump right into the proposed budget for fiscal year 2025 with some highlights. The proposed budget does include a cost of living adjustment of 5% for existing staff. We are also adding one part-time billing clerk for the utility window. The general fund budget will have a few changes. For instance, a city council operating budget has been added. Payroll expenditures that have been associated with the EDC are now going to be reflected in the EDC budget. And it does provide for a full-time mechanic, diesel certified, a part-time senior activity coordinator, and the existing GIS analyst position has been moved from the stormwater fund to the general fund. In addition, a 5-year capital replacement schedule has been added to the general fund, capital replacement fund. Starting off with the utility fund, anticipated total revenues are at 17.1 million, with total expenditures at 17.1 million for a balanced budget. As you can see here, each department is broken out. Do you have any questions on that? With the stormwater, we have total revenues at 1.5 million, with total expenditures at 1.4 million for a balanced budget. Debt service general fund, the revenues are broken down into ad valorem at 1.6 million, use of fund values for 415,000, and interest at 83,000, with expenditures, my apologies, listed out in the bonds here. The 2016 gold bond, we have a 314,000, 2019 gold bond, 679,000, 2022 gold bond, 501,000, 2023 gold bond, 449,000, and the library bond, which is our 2014 certificate of obligation, at 222,000. The utility fund side, we have revenues from water sales of 1.4 million, with expenditures broken down here. The 2012 refunding bond, 360,000, 2015 certificate of obligation, 201,000, 2017 certificate of obligation, 200,000, 2020 refunding bond, 172,000, 2022 certificate of obligation, 336,000, and Sarah at 167,000. For capital improvement on the general fund side, we have total revenues at 12.1 million, with expenditures forecasted at 12.1 million for a balanced budget. And on the utility fund capital improvement side, we have expenditures forecasted at 6.6 million. Stormwater capital improvements, we have forecasted at 959,000. The city has 13 special revenue funds. These funds are kept separate from our operating costs due to federal and state mandates and restrictions on the use of funds.
So we're not actually taking a break. After we've had some discussion on what we presented, and we can go into whatever detail council thinks they need at this point. all of these items that we have were the same items that were in your individual budgets, and some of you talked about some of them during your individual sessions. So if you have any other questions we can answer for you on these items, please let us know, and then we'll go back and forth between the slides.
Thank you very much. Can an effort be made to make the slides that are presented consistent with or reference to the specific fund number that was provided to council? So that essentially hours of looking over this stuff type thing makes sense with regard to what's being presented in abstract form.
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, because we had Sarah and we also had Grady here, we thought it best to just go ahead and present the smaller items so that we can get through that a little bit faster. But absolutely, when the actual budget is presented, that'll be presented in the format that you're given. And we apologize. We can tell you where they're at in the budget if you'd like. That way we can just flip through. Okay. Which portion would you like to look at first?
Well, basically, if we could look at the bonds, the debt fund.
Okay.
And can you reference it to your document provided to council member?
Yes, sir. If you, actually, do you mind if I approach and I can find it in the budget for you?
Yeah, I know that too. So first of all, let's just clarify while she's on her way. This is the debt service that you wanted to look at? Okay, thank you, sir.
I apologize.
No
That was no problem. There you go. Okay. So the first one will be to your general fund and then after that is okay.
So in the case of the general fund, essentially the actual budget for 2024 shows a revenue over expenditures of $1.7 million. However, when I look through the general fund, I find essentially in the proposed budget, adding together the utility fund and the general fund, there's actually $3.6 million between the two. So essentially 1.4 plus 2.16 gives me essentially a debt service of $3.6 million. Is that correct?
No, sir. You actually can't combine them because one is paid by Aquilon, the other is paid by water revenue.
Understand, but I'm looking at the 35,000 foot level to say how much debt do we have
I understand.
in this fiscal year coming up.
This fiscal year coming up, fiscal year 2025, for the general fund will be $1.2 million. And then for our utility fund is going to be $1.4 million. The reason you see your actuals being less than what would have been anticipated is because we don't actually make another principal and interest payment, but the principal payment is not made until August. And these numbers are from March. So in August, what you'll see is the principal being paid and then the second portion of the interest being paid. And then that will come to the $1.4 million that was budgeted. I'm sorry, the 2.1 million that was budgeted.
Again, to repeat, that's 1.4 million for the utility fund. And how much again?
For the general fund was 2.1.
Okay, so again,
3.5 total.
35,000 feet. At the start of the next fiscal year, we are $3.6 million in debt.
Between the two funds, yes, sir.
Between the two funds.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other comments, questions?
Any other questions from staff?
Negative.
Your one-on-one was fantastic, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Want to proceed with the individuals or?
Councilman Rubal, just to confirm that answered the question, correct? Because it's a little difficult for me to hear sometimes on the council. I just want to be sure that answered the question.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
We begin fiscal year $3.6 million for debt service fund.
Yes, sir. Between the two funds, yes, sir, that's correct.
Yes.
And what we'll do is I will try to provide within the actual proposed budget a copy of the debt schedule that we're provided. That way you'll have that to look at as well.
I believe with that, we are at the 6 o'clock hour, which is when we had anticipated that we would take our break. So, Mayor, if you wouldn't mind putting us in a break for about 15 to 20 minutes.
It is 5:54. Break too fast, bring it back in.
You're the only one.
What time did you say we didn't have? Someone started asking questions before we were this far.
Well, I've been doing that. No, no.
You ready? It is 6:12 and we're reconvening to the workshop. Let me tell you what I wrote down for the last final get.
We didn't know Bear had made his own rules. We didn't know about that.
Over to you.
Oh, it's up to us. Where are we? We are at the general fund. Thank you.
Welcome back. Beginning with the general fund, we have the general fund departments listed here. As you can see, City Council has been added in with the administration, development services, human resources, finance, municipal court, juvenile case management, general services, parks and rec, police, fire, vehicle equipment maintenance, animal shelter, library, and non-departmental, which was added in last fiscal year. With a total of 15 departments, of course. The general fund forecasted total revenue is 19.9 million. Tax revenues represent 74% of the general fund's budget. Ad valorem at 9.2 million. Sales tax 3.6 million, and franchise fees at 1.4 million. Here we have the general fund expenditures by department. City Council, City Council, we have at 35,000. Administration, 576,000. Development Services, 1.3 million. Human Resources, 171,000. Finance, 537,000. Municipal Court, 229,000. Juvenile Case Management, 71,000. General Services, 2.3 million. Parks and Recreation, 1.8 million. Police, 4.8 million. Fire Department, 3.8 million. Vehicle Equipment Maintenance, 450,000. Animal Shelter, 865,000. And Library, 598,000. Non-departmental, we have at 2 million, 2.1 million.
So we're going to stop with the general fund here and then address any questions that council might have related to the general fund.
And again, just the privilege of asking for the identification of the general fund number that part of the discussion, so I can track with the documents.
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, the general fund is made up of a bunch of different numbers for departments. The first one's going to be 5009, I believe, which is his city council. If you don't have anything for the city council, then it would be 5110.
With regrets, it doesn't appear to be in numeric order. We have 5110.
Yeah, this is
5110.
Yes, 5109 is going to be the council, and then 5110.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Do you have a question based upon that?
Yes, sir. $35,000 for council, and basically it states that there's a $16,000 in allowances for council, $500 printing, subscriptions $3,800, and total supplies and materials $14,500. Well, basically, if we look at what is proposed in the budget, there's two things that stand out. One, there was no actual budget identified either for 2023 or 2024, or this category budgeted in 2024, or at least the numbers aren't there. And basically, I would suggest that council could do with a budget of $4,610 rather than $35,390. I'm not exactly sure what the budgeted amount is for, since essentially I know we get about $30 a month.
Well, Councilmember Raval, let me address the first question. The reason there's nothing for 23 or 24 is because we didn't have this department created until this fiscal year for transparency.
It was included in the administrative departments.
These expenses were expensed out of the admin department. So basically for council travel to go to like the TML conference, if everyone travels to the TML conference, the conference, the accommodations plus travel is approximately $4,500. And then for uniforms like the logo shirts and other items, if every person receives a name tag, a jacket, and a shirt, then it's about $1,800. Then there's the cost of the TML conference, which is $700 for each council member. There is the TML elected officials training, which is $225 per council member. And then the NEP, there's a cost there as well. And then Tri-County luncheons are $25 for each time that you go to those Tri-County luncheons. Other than that, for supplies, departing gifts for council members in their term, for instance, business or individual gifts that are requested through council, but for us to do, and budget workshop snacks and drinks are budgeted under council. So that's where all those costs are coming from. And then the dues and memberships are primarily related to the mayor, but they are used by the council members as well. TML, the membership for the city for TML is $3,300 alone. Then there's also the iPads and the cost to maintain or replace the iPads, as well as the Apple Pencils that are provided, which is $7,700. And then we're estimating the cost of supplies, if you had one part-time employee, at about $7,000 a year for supplies. So if you wanted to come in and make copies of something as far as the budget, if you want us to print items that are related to it, those would go into that cost. And then on top of that, you do have the allowance, which you're correct, sir, is $30 per council member, and then $40 for the mayor per month.
Let me kind of set the tone at the 35,000 feet or higher level.
Okay?
Let's set the tone for identifying the items in the budget that first are essential for essential services and personnel only. Number two, all basic resident services without amenities and non-essential enterprises. Number three tier, expenses and personnel costs for amenities and non-essential enterprise operations. And number four, expenses for external staff training and significant needs foreseen and for significant needs foreseen within the next 5 years. So basically, what is essential training for council? And what is essentially a fluff for council?
Well, that would be a decision council would have to.
I'm sorry, ma'am?
That would be something the council would have to determine what they felt was necessary for their training.
Correct.
That wouldn't be a staff call. So
Correct.
that would be something you'd have to discuss among the council members to decide what they do and do not want to have included in their budget.
So given the standard the mayor has set forth that there is no uniform requirement to stand before us, and there is, obviously a presentable requirement.
I do want a new uniform. We are for public appearances
Yes.
and public services as a team. I just ruled that uniforms would not have to be worn during normal meetings unless you decide to do so. Dress casual, business casual would be the dress. But uniforms are still mandated.
What essential training is there for council for $7,350?
I
Essential
agree to
training.
that. So,
Required for the duty of the council.
well, required, none. Suggested, highly recommended, plenty. You all should have gone to the planning and zoning training. You all should go to the Board of Adjustments training. You should all go to the elected officials training. And if it's nearby, you should all go to the TML and go to all the training that they have for elected officials
There's a
and the
difference.
items that they cover.
There's a difference between local training and the appraisal council to understand the needs and function of the city and training outside of our city limits. Okay, that essentially is not essential for the performance of our duty on the council.
I believe it is.
Okay,
Absolutely, I need it. I didn't come in prepared. I have to have the training. I've been through P&Z training, I've been through the BOA training, and I come out with worlds of information that I didn't have going in on how to make decisions and how to interpret things. I think it's very essential for me personally.
Councilmember Raval, I might ask that, because this is for the city council, that once all the council has discussed it, if they want to direct staff to reduce it or change it in any way, we can always do that. But I
so
don't,
how do we go about making that a recommendation at this council meeting? Do we put it for a vote? What do we do?
well, it's a workshop today, so it's not really something you're voting on. You're not really discussing the actual budget. This is just to give you a second view of what the budget is, so that you can start really thinking about what items may or may not need to be removed. And unfortunately, the question would probably be better addressed by either Mrs. Turner or Mayor.
Okay.
So I'm not 100% sure, to be honest.
So again, at the 60,000 feet level, 3 members of this dais, including Ms. Putt, said control of our property taxes was the #1 priority for this council. And I understand your budget. I understand the budget sequence, but unless we decide what's essential and what's non-essential, I don't mind having a second consideration of things that are nice to do, that are helpful, but I'm saying essential versus non-essential as the theme for this budget workshop.
Well, and I understand, sir, but unfortunately, it would have to be a consensus of the council to make that decision. So what I might suggest is the ideas that you have, that you think that these may not be essential, those are things that you'll want to address with the council members. I don't know that the workshop is the right place to do it, only because we do have two council members out here that won't be able to have their voices heard. So maybe keeping note that that's something that you're interested in, and you had told us that in the one-on-one meetings as well. So I have it noted. When we actually have the budget presentation, would probably be a more appropriate time for us to start saying, okay, let's take these things out.
Would it be possible for the presentation of the budget next iteration to align the budget with regard to those 4 tiers
I
of priorities?
can do my very best to provide what we need, what we know we need, and the items that we could postpone to the next fiscal year. And then we can give you, once we have our tax rate numbers, it would be a lot easier for us to really see what's the best way to handle the budget. Unfortunately, because the way the law is set up, we're required to present a budget to you. We're required to give you the proposed budget by the 31st of July, but we don't get our tax rates till the 25th. So the idea is that on August 6th, we will come in with tax rate options, and then we can tell you at that point what would need to be removed from the budget in order to take care of whatever the tax rate would be.
Our city has consistently in expenses based tax assessment values, appraised values, and then matched our property taxes with those expectations, and it begins with the budget workshop.
Well, you're incorrect, sir, because forgive me, I don't know about historically, but I can say certainly last year that is not what happened, and that will not be what happens this year. We're going to get our tax rate, we'll look at our tax rate, and we will try to have our budget in line with what council directs us. If council tells us that they want the tax rate to be the no new revenue rate, then we'll do our very best to get it within that line. Ultimately, you make the decision on where our budget is, but it is all based on the tax rate. And if you look historically, the city was at a really high tax rate, and they're dropping off. So I really truly believe that if council looks at the budget, they say they want no new revenue, we can go back and we can see what can be postponed until the next fiscal year.
No new revenue is something, okay?
I'm sorry?
No new revenue is a concept, okay? The concept is to reduce tax rate to be compatible with our other cities based on the city's essential needs, basic services, expenses and personnel costs, and then amenities and so forth. Without doing that,
May I ask a question here? We're way down below 30,000 feet. We're cherry picking. The purpose of this workshop is to identify the needs of the city. What the city said the departments need to operate in 2025. Once they present their entire presentation, the council as a whole has a chance to go back in and agree with it wholeheartedly or individually. But this is not a debate now about he said, she said, and that's what we're doing right now. I would request that the council give the city the opportunity to make the presentation of what the departments need, because this is a plan for we need. We still need good people. We need training. We all need training. But do we need, to the extent, everybody needs a different amount. But there's still training needs. Every department out there needs to have a training budget. And yes, we don't want more revenue, but we don't want to set ourselves up for failure for future years of trying to make it up. So with that being said, maybe we proceed with and find out exactly what the city plan is. So all the questions to the end.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it's my understanding that this is an appraisal by the members of the staff on what their budget is on the basis of those 4 priorities, but rather essentially what it is based on what their projected thoughts are, not necessarily the priorities of the city. Is that correct?
No, it is what they need to get their job done over the next year. Now, you may not agree what they need, but that's to be determined at a later point. It's at least for them, give them the opportunity to at least make a presentation of what they need. I thank you, sir. for your comment.
Okay, so now that was for the city council, and do we have any questions regarding the administrative fund or department? All right, so if we don't have any questions related to our admin department, we'll move to development services. We need the numbers. Human resources. Okay, our finance department. Any questions regarding our finance department? Which I just want to point out, just because it makes me feel good. The audit cost us this fiscal year a third of what it's costed us the past 2 fiscal years. Just want to throw that out there. Sorry. Municipal court and juvenile court.
May I ask one question,
Yes,
just
sir.
for clarification? Where did you come up with these figures? How did you accumulate these figures?
Which figures, sir?
The figures that you're presenting?
Oh, our totals. The departments were provided prior year's budget, and then they go through and they provide us with what is either on their capital replacement plans, or they will determine what their costs are. Once we receive those back from the departments, Mrs. Turner and I sit down and we go through and we determine whether or not we think that they're viable costs. And this year, staff took the extra step for me, for finance, which was greatly appreciated. And they took the time to look at what all their training was, what the actual cost of that training was training available online as opposed to leaving the city. Their contract services, were their contract services still valid? With the help of Maribel, we were able to combine some of the softwares that are used to reduce the cost for the city. So in reality, it's a very lean budget. It's 3.3% over what it was last year, which is in line with the
Consumer Price Index.
thank you.
We did everything we could to run a flat budget.
So that's the process. The process is it's provided to the departments bring it to finance, and then we review it to ensure that there are no costs that stand out to us so that we think are excessive. The police department alone is at a lower budget this year than they were last year. They found some items that they were able to remove from the budget because they felt like they weren't necessary. So even with the small increases with the fire department, they were offset by the police department. So, and in reality, our emergency services and public works is about 74% of our budget. So the rest of the other departments are carrying 25%. So, but if there are no questions regarding the general fund, then we'd like to move on to the golf course. So, just
I was going to say, from my reading of the budget and from my meeting with you, I kind of came away with the fact that this budget, like you're saying, is very lean. We're just trying to stay very much on parity with what we spent last year. And I know last year you ended up going through and cutting a number of things, like employee recognition programs and kind of some of those other things that were kind of considered gravy, and to some level. Not that I think anybody's recognition is gravy. I appreciate what all of you do. But I kind of appreciated this year where you called out the capital expenditures, the places where we were going to spend money. And I think to the city council point, that is a new budget item, but that money has always been kind of set aside for us in the administrative fund, correct?
Correct.
So it's always been money that's there and it's been targeted towards council. This year is the first time that we've.
You've seen it separately.
Right,
Yes.
okay. So in my mind, I'm not looking for where can I save money in each of the department budgets. It's kind of like looking at the capital expenditures and seeing of those, which ones are necessary this year, what can we put off, if there's an opportunity at all to do those kinds of things.
Right. So, and one of the things that we did in this budget, which we understood loud and clear. So when we presented the budget in prior years, we had already removed some of the capital purchases in order to keep the budget low. And then, and some of it was added back in and some of it was not. This year, as a staff, we followed the direction that council gave us last year. We did not remove any capital purchases from this budget. So does that mean that we're expecting you to approve a tax rate that 100% supports every item that's in this budget? The answer is no. Maybe. It would be nice. But if you come back and say, hey, we'd like you to cut the budget by X amount of dollars so we can reach a specific tax rate, we're prepared to do that. You just have to give us the direction. And I'm going to go back again to what I said earlier. August 6th, this is when the rubber is going to meet the road, and we're going to have a discussion on the no new revenue tax rate, the current tax rate, and all the other tax rates by law that we are required to present to you. And then, suggest some alternatives and some recommendations that we're going to get from you on what you would like the tax rate to be. And hopefully you will give us some of the authority to go back and say, got it, let us go in and look as a group, because we all have a part of the pie in it, and see what we can postpone to future years, and so we can get the tax rate in the budget and still provide the necessary services that we need. That's what's going to happen on August 6th.
So until then, as we go over this, I can make an appointment with you and Christine and go line item by line item, going, explain this one to me.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
It would be the meeting that we all had with you, and if you say, look, I had an hour and a half with you and it wasn't enough time, may I have 2 hours? You just have to give us some indication of how much time and how many questions so we can make sure we budget our time appropriately.
Thank you.
So basically, in some of these items, you look at it and it's 40 to 50% increase over a 2-year period, and some 1-year increases in budget items, line items of several hundred to even 1,000% increase in some budget items. And so I'm very confused about what the function of the budget workshop is if it is not to discuss the items that are presented in the budget.
Councilmember Rubal, can you point out any of those items so that I can address them? If you
But
say,
you want it addressed here.
I can address it right now if you'd like. I just need to know what line item you're looking at so we can address it.
Let's start. Can you define donations and contributions on page 1? And forgive me. Just before I left and printed these off, they hit my floor. Let's start for just general purposes. General Fund 01, General Services 5140, Infrastructure. Essentially, in this category, there's greater than 250% increase in travel and training over a 1-year period, a 383% increase in building maintenance. Street maintenance actually decreased during this period of time. And we know how much of a problem our streets are. Signal maintenance increased 1,347% over a 1-year period.
Mr. Obama.
There's an increase in rental fees of 300%. There's an increase in contract services that are undefined of $39,920.
Councilmember Rubal, I can't address the questions if you continue to ask them. So can we start with one line item, and then I can address that line item for you?
So we're in general fund, general services. I'm repeating that for public works because this is your department, so you know where we are. Okay.
So which line item would you like to start with?
1540. 1540. Travel expenses increased 250%.
Which line item is that?
Basically, it's Of course, COLA and under allowances, first entry under allowances. Essentially, there's an increase from 2024 to 2025 at 250%.
Mr. Rubal, you're referring to the $1,400, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So that is a street sweeper operator that will go to the Timco school since our last street sweeper operator retired. So this is training for him.
Training for him, for the street sweeper.
Operator.
Operator. We don't have an operator currently certified?
Not right now, no.
Oh, really?
He retired.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Okay, uniform maintenance increased 270%. Building maintenance increased 383%.
Councilmember Rubal, again, I can't answer the questions. Now, the uniform maintenance,
It's exactly the same.
Operational costs have increased.
universe increase, okay.
I'm sorry?
The operational costs of the uniforms have increased.
Okay. And what was the next line item?
Building maintenance increased 383%.
It went from
The one
3,000 to
period.
14,500. So what are you doing for building maintenance, Randy?
I gotta get to it.
And then just to put you in the queue, single maintenance increased 1,470%.
So there's a lighting upgrade for the shop down there. So we're making them go from our fluorescents to LED lighting. That's what that's for.
Would you
On
say
building maintenance?
Yes, under building maintenance, yes.
For building maintenance.
And
Single
then can you,
maintenance.
Randy, so you have multiple items that have to do with street and ground. Can you go over your street maintenance budget, your ground maintenance budget, and your signal maintenance, what you're doing?
Yes,
in
under
those three categories.
maintenance of streets. This will be our striping of most of our streets. For this year in that particular budget, we'll be striping West Aviation, Kitty Hawk from Pat Booker Road to Sunrise Canyon, Athenian from Pat Booker Road to Centerbrook, Athenian from Centerbrook to UC Boulevard, West Bird to Pat Booker, East Bird to Pat Booker to East Langley, Northview, Parkview to Pat Booker, Sunrise Canyon, UC Boulevard to Millridge, Solo Trail at North Boulevard, North at Kitty Hawk and Coronado, which will be Pat Booker to UC Boulevard, which is a total of 172,000.
So that's under single maintenance? Sorry,
Street
Street
maintenance.
maintenance.
Street maintenance.
All right, next item, can you please go, Randy, to ground maintenance?
Ground maintenance is our ground maintenance of our public works office, our the islands on Kitty Hawk Gibbs Straw Road. We have the Kitty Hawk Sunrise Canyon Island, the islands at Kitty Hawk Gibbs Straw Sprawl, and then UC Boulevard at Balboa Island. And then we have basically a line item for replacing damaged pods and damages that we have on the islands.
All right, and then can you go to signal maintenance? You went from 9,000 to 130,000.
Yeah, this is a huge upgrade that we have to do to all our traffic signals. So we've had evaluation come, Brandon Peterson, Assistant Director, has been out with Iteris, and who's the other one that you were out with?
Those Iteris.
Iteris. So we made a checklist of items that need to be replaced out there. So in this particular one, we have batteries at $300. There's 6 locations that we're doing. So it's $300 a location. There's traffic signal detector camera upgrades that we're having to do at 3 signals. Our annual ITER support contract, which is only $1,500, and then miscellaneous maintenance on basically anything that goes wrong with the signal itself at about $5,000.
So how does that up to $130,000? $1,347.
The traffic signal detector alone at 3 upgrades, $116,523.
Thank you.
And then one last item, just so we can make sure that we've covered it. Engineering services, Randy, you had nothing and now you have 278,500.
So a lot of my engineering used to be when we're doing CDBG projects where stormwater was in our stormwater fund. We are now turned our CDBG projects into street projects, which this one has our Flintstone. This coming year will be our Flintstone Drive grant and design engineering is what we have in there for that. We were awarded an SS4A grant. We have funds in there for that, which is our grant match of $40,000. And then we also have highway safety improvement, which is the part of the administrative portion of the SS4A for $20,000. And then we have a comprehensive, let me scroll down. Part of the SS4A, we have a grant application that we're going to be applying for some of these improvements, engineering. And then we have, which our grant match will be $94,000 for that. It's an 80-20 grant.
Next down, the signage increases, 89% increase.
Signage. Yeah.
Supplies.
So we've had a lot of, these are the school battery flashing batteries that we put for school zones. Those are batteries in there. We put in for some new flashers, 3 of them, which total $15,900. We got 10,000 in there for sign blanks. We got 10,000 in there for signage material sheeting. That's the stuff because we make our own signs here. And then we have 2 electronic solar signs that were also included for $7,000.
General entry for all of the departments within your area have been an increase in hand tools. Is that cost? Is that due to the fact that there are losses, stole? Essentially, Craftsman doesn't make good wrenches anymore. In this case, it's only 100% increase in hand tools, but it's ubiquitous across almost all of your departments.
It's the cost.
Significant number.
It's the cost of the tools. We're seeing what tools that they're going buying for. We're getting half the amount of tools that we need based on the cost of the tools.
I guess my point is, I didn't think that hand tools actually fell apart that frequently.
Mr. Mayor, may I jump in?
Yes.
Do you mind if I interrupt you? Every construction job we have, there's a line item for hand tools because they constantly break. I mean, the construction industry, they constantly wear out. And so we have a line item for hand tools because it's a wearing out process.
Thank you, Councilman, but the point is there's an increase of over 100%, almost across the board.
And we've seen basically in the construction industry, we've seen nearly a doubling of the construction prices over the last few years. So it kind of goes into materials and all the way down into the tools, even into the labor, just as a backup there for you.
Hand tools could be power drills, just the cordless drills alone. The batteries of those are expensive. Depends on the type that we have, but it's just not regular a hammer or a shovel. It's a variety of different tools.
Mayor and council members, I think we're losing sight of what the budget is. The budget is just a projection. It's not saying that we're absolutely going to spend $1,500 on hand tools. However, it is illegal for us to exceed our budget. So if we exceed our expenditure budget, then we don't come in for a budget amendment. We have at that point not followed GFLA or GASB rules. So we may budget a little bit high. That's a possibility, but that does not mean it's set in stone that money is going to be spent. It's really just a wild guess at what we think we're going to need as far as these type of items.
I wouldn't say a wild guess, and the reason I have Randy reading his budget, because his budget's no different than everybody else's. You can see that every line item that's been asked of him, he knows exactly what's in there, and he knows what he needs to get his dang job done. So my recommendation is rather than sit here and nitpick every little item on there, understand holistically that there are things that we need to get the job done. Do we know that things are more expensive than they were last year or 5 years? Absolutely. If anybody's ever bought something and you have an Allen wrench for it, guess what? If you need an Allen wrench, it might be the one Allen wrench that you don't have in your size of all the Allen wrenches that you have, because that's the way the industry makes their money. So guess what? We're gonna plan to go out and buy an Allen wrench so that we have it to make up the one size that we didn't have. I'm telling you, they're experts. They know what to do. They know how to do their job. They know how to get the estimates. They know how to plan to get the work done. I would like for us to stay, if possible, at the big picture level. If you have granular questions that you have, again, come back and see us. And, you know, if we have to, we can assemble all 11 department heads to sit there and answer all the granular questions that you have. But I would hope that we would have some respect for the people that spent 3 months getting their estimates, figuring out what they need, and give them some credit on the work that they have done and how granular that they are when they do their operating budget. And I think what we really need to be focusing on is the capital purchases, which are always the things that are gonna tip the boat over. The extra $1,000 or $1,500 in hand tools is not what's gonna sink the ship. You need to focus on your big picture items.
Ma'am, when we talk
And I thank
about
Randy for being the example for the rest of the department.
Ma'am, when we talk about a 14,900% increase in some of these budget items, I do believe they do need to be discussed before we approve items.
And that's why I recommend that if you are the one that wants that, or any of you individually, you want that, come back and see us. We're gonna spend the time with you. But
So your purpose today is just to give a gestalt of what they would like to have, rather than have it defined on
Let me answer that.
criteria of essential needs for the city.
Ms. Brule, let me answer that.
I'm gonna say they're all essential needs, or that wouldn't be in
That's
the
right.
budget in the first place.
The purpose of this workshop is for the department heads to present the budget that they feel that they need for the following year, or the coming year. It is based upon past history, based on future forecasts and assumptions. It is not an exact science, but if you've done budgets before, anybody has done budgets more than 3 years in a row, there is a trend analysis that they use. It is not locked in stone. It is the guideline forward. Cost increases are assumed. We don't know exactly what it's going to be. We don't know if we're going to have 8 people that are going to be sick on sick leave for 6 weeks each, which increases our pay. There's a lot of things that are unknown. However, we factor in the forecast that we think is there, and we present the budget. This is what they're presenting that they need to get their job done. If you have questions individually, I would respectfully ask that you take an appointment with the city manager and the chief financial officer and discuss those individually. And let's stay and find out, let the department heads make their presentation. It is not our job to sit there and tell them how to operate day-to-day operations. We give them the money and let them spend it.
Well, sir, thank you very much for your comment. The basic concept is we have to live within the means of the residents of Universal City and for their best interests in it.
21,000 people, best interest, not 1 or 2 individuals that's worried about whether a councilman or an individual gets trained or not.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett, for your comment.
You're very welcome. Please proceed.
Okay, so I'm not sure what line item we're on. And I'm not sure which one is.
Let's bring it back up to the 30,000 foot level and see.
All right, so then at the 30,000 foot level, these are the budgets for each individual department. Again, the general services, police, fire, and non-departmental are approximately 74% of the budget. The rest of the departments, which, is that 12? Give me a moment. Thank you so much. The rest of the departments would be approximately 25% of the budget. If there are no further questions on the general fund, though, okay, we can go over the capital replacement, which is toward the back of the budget.
Do you all bring your budget books with you?
I have copies. I do.
Capital expenditures.
I don't know. I'm kind of all over the place
Sorry,
here.
I'm sorry, ma'am, would you give us a number for that?
Essentially from down that line.
Thank you.
So there's going to be one change on the document that you'll see one change on the document you have compared to the budget that was provided. And it is that there's $95,000 that was listed under this year's budget. But after researching it further, it should actually only be under the 26-27 budget. So it was just listed twice on the spreadsheet, so we've corrected that. Other than that, Development Services was scheduled to have one of their vehicles replaced this year, but for fiscal year 25. But what they've done is they've pushed that off. They pushed their vehicle replacements off by 1 year because they feel like they can use what they currently have. So you won't see that until fiscal year 25-26. So if you go down to General Services, the items that are listed here with the cost of replacement, these are the items that can be found under the General Services capital line item. Some of them are vehicle replacements, some of them are equipment replacements. The total is going to be $195,420. Parks and Recreation have some mowers that have to be replaced, some benches and trash receptacles within the parks, some water fountains that, are they being replaced or built, Randy? Okay, so they'll be new. An enclosed mower and then an F-150, because the F-150 they have right now is what year is that one?
2002 or 2006?
2006.
Okay.
2006.
So for police, they're replacing their computers, and then on their schedule they have where they replace 2 vehicles every year for their vehicle replacement. Right now they're using Ford Explorers, which are approximately $55,000. That includes the vehicle and then the outfit for the vehicle. Fire, we've listed the $550,000 each year in order to purchase the fire trucks through cash. So there'll be cash funded. At least one of the vehicles we may have to request a loan for the second, but that's something we can look at in the future. The SCAVA's back at is it SCAVA? SCBA?
Oh, SCBA's.
Yes, sir. And then you have that as well as the other equipment that goes with it. And then you have an EMS life pack of $50,000. So can you explain the SCAVA's?
So the SCBA's that we currently have are out of warranty. The life of the SCBA, so self-contained breathing apparatuses that we wear on the backs, are a 10-year warranty. Right now, we're outside that warranty. We put off buying them this past year. There's a standard cycle that we were kind of up against the wall. If we would have bought them last year, we lost 2 years in that cycle. The new standard that's come out, and we're going to replace what we have now.
So that's what's within the fire department's budget. Thank you, sir. Vehicle equipment maintenance. They have a floor scrubber machine that they're replacing. Okay. Animal shelter has
Skipped over the Ford F-50. Vehicle maintenance and equipment.
No, this is the one that had to be taken. Yes, we can talk about that. So the animal shelter has 2 AC units being replaced. One AC unit being replaced.
The last one.
That is $97,000. And then they also are replacing an F-150 That vehicle, I believe, is close to the same age as the other vehicle that's being replaced, around 2000 to 2005. Is that right?
That one is a 2000, let's see.
Okay, I believe it was 2005 or 2007, I'm not 100% sure. So that total capital purchase would be, or capital items would be 162,000. City Hall is having AC units replaced, 3 of them this fiscal year, which was a total of $55,000. And then on the replacement schedule, 2 years later, we'll have the $40,000. So that's basically the capital items that are within the budget that are capital replacement items. Are there any questions about that?
I do have one question. Are these items by department, are they, I really like, this is a new format that we got from past years, and I like this format. Are they prioritized by department? Meaning the ones at the top are the most important items that I need?
No, sir.
They're not, okay.
Yes, sir. I asked departments this year to provide me with whatever it is that they need to operate and to do their jobs to the best of their abilities for the citizens of the city. And that's what they've provided. If the council comes and says that we need to reduce the revenue for the ad valorem, or we want to reduce the tax rate, whatever it is that happens there, it would be easiest for us and best for staff to be allowed to remove what we know we can push to the next fiscal year. So we could postpone certain things, but if we're directed with an amount, it makes it easier for us to determine what we need to remove or what we need to move to future fiscal year.
And that's what the direction we're looking for you from on August 6th.
Yeah.
The self-contained breathing apparatuses, you say they're out of warranty?
Yes, Mayor. We purchased them, I believe, in 2013, so we're just out of warranty now. The repair costs are pretty substantial whenever we do have to replace them or give them service. This last go around, we had them serviced and it would have cost us $47,000, but we got it right under warranty.
Okay, I understand that. How is that affecting the health and safety of our firemen?
So we have standard cycles. Mine is back in 2013, missed 2 upgrades to the standard. And we're basically at the point where we need to go ahead and replace them.
Having worked with professional firemen and law enforcement for a number of years in a number of places, primarily military, it's unacceptable for us to get behind schedule with that.
Yes.
In my opinion. That's just my opinion. But I appreciate the initiative of holding off 2 years in order to take advantage of the upgrade.
Correct.
And so based on the comments, I'm sure you're monitoring that closely.
Yes, sir.
And Mayor, I can say from an overall staff perspective, if council come back and says, please reduce, the budgets and some capital purchases, this is not an item that we're going to recommend that we postpone them. I think generally speaking, we all already understand that.
Which is one of the reasons we're asking for direction with a number instead of council telling us what to remove. Unfortunately, if council were to say, remove those items, and we know we cannot remove them. So I understand the prioritizing the purchases may have been done that way in the past. But in other cities I've lived, in other cities I've worked for, it works best if council allows staff to determine what needs to be removed as far as capital items.
Well, I'm used to operating a budget for worldwide operations, 88 different operations around the world. And we would prioritize whatever we need. When they come to me and say, you've got to cut $100 million out of your budget, then it was my job to go through, and that's the reason why I asked the prioritization list, because as I'm doing it, I kind of go down and say, okay, I could stop right here and then negotiate with each of the department heads, saying, okay, here's where your budget line goes. What do you want? What do you want about the line that you want to bring down below the line and below the line and above the line.
Well, yes, sir.
So
And that's basically what we intend
And
to
that's what I
do.
was,
Yes,
that's
sir.
the reason
Yes,
why I was asking.
exactly.
We're on the same,
We're on the same page. Were there any other questions regarding the capital purchases?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Is there consistency with this list, with the vehicle replacement list that the council was provided
Yes, sir.
recently?
Yes, sir.
Did not appear to be so, but I don't have that first list that was sent to me
So the
recently.
vehicle equipment replacement list was more than 5 years out. So it will look differently. And if you, excuse me, if you looked at the one where it had the tabs by department, that's how this is broken down. If you went through the really long list, it was just kind of a mush-mash of everybody's equipment and vehicles on one page. If you go to the second item where it has the tabs on it, then it's the vehicle equipment replacement by department. And it's the by the department which is reflected.
Okay.
But you also may want to consider too that, for instance, Development Services has foregone their purchases and they have decided to move it to a different fiscal year, and that may not be reflected on that document.
Is there any consideration for sharing resources between departments, i.e., we have a vehicle that is gently used, given the fact that we're paying $340,000 or close to that number, I don't remember it off the head, for essentially vehicle repair personnel, not including their total budget, which I think is closer to $400,000+, again, by memory only. Is there consideration that we can take a gently used vehicle and move it to another department?
Absolutely, we do, all the time.
Yes, sir.
That's why Development Services has nothing but used vehicles.
Take that.
Randy?
Yeah, we currently do that now. Like, my mechanics have an old police unit that they use as a parts running vehicle. And then we have Jeremy back there, he benefits a lot from our equipment that we rotate out. And then I will transfer that equipment down to him at the golf course to where they don't have to buy it. So he's gotten trucks, he's gotten, chipper, and we got a backhoe that's probably going down to him next. And then on the animal shelter, the one pickup that they got that we're replacing was one of my old trucks from years ago. So they had that one. So thank you.
And I want to point out that the benefit of taking equipment that is used off-road or on-site all the time by Public Works, I mean, it is used extensively. The benefit of taking it to the golf course is they never take it out on the street, they never take it off property. It's just there and they're going real short trips with it. And so that's one of the advantages that we have of sending used equipment to the golf course.
And what are we going to do with the 1960 parade truck?
The 1960s parade truck, well, it's been used a couple times in the last
It's used every parade.
Every parade.
And every pancake breakfast.
And every pumpkin patch and signage for other things. And so I know that the truck was given to the city, right, which we appreciate the generosity of the people who gave it to us. Randy's guys have done a great job in getting it up and running when it needs to be. But quite frankly, we don't feel like at this time we need to spend a whole bunch of money making it run when all we're really using it for is, it's a brand ambassador. We can hook it up to a truck, take it where it needs to be, and it can sit there and look pretty. Is it licensed?
Yeah, and it's running.
And it runs, how about that?
Shall we move on to golf course?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There you go. Ellie, what'd you There you go. That, stop, there.
That's where I'm.
Yes, yeah. Okay, I broke it. Oh, there you go, okay.
With the golf course fund, we are looking at a revenue which is broken down in front of you for general and admin at 1.5 million, course and grounds at 1.7 million, the golf pro shop 151,000, range 100,000, food and beverage 780,000, and marketing at 129,000 with a total revenue of 4.4 million forecasted. Expenditures, once again broken down here, general and admin 1.3 million, course and grounds 1.4 million, carts 264,000, pro shop 296,000, range 20,000, food and beverage 898,000, marketing 129,000 for a total expenditure of 4.3 million for a balanced budget.
So I know there are probably some questions regarding the golf course. And again, if there are questions, if you could ask the question and then allow us to answer, that will probably be the most efficient way.
You have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, can there be, would you please define under revenue summaries where general and admin funds come from?
Oh, yes. Okay, so general and admin revenue, a portion of it is other G&A income, which is miscellaneous income that could be, for instance, if there was a rebate received for Coca-Cola products or something to that effect. The venue tax is going to be contributing $1.1 million this fiscal year. The billboard revenue for the billboard that is on hole 14 is $80,000. Interest income is $210,000. And then there's a credit card processing fee of $45,000, but you have to realize that there's also an expense related to that that offset each other. And those would be the revenues for the general and admin.
So basically, can you make the statement that the earned revenue, not including venue tax, not including hotel tax, not including billboard signage, earned revenue for the golf course projected for 2025 will exceed expenses?
I'm sorry, sir, I can't hear you.
Will what expenses?
Will exceed the expenses that are listed here under your expense summary. So you have an expense summary of $4,345,000 total, but when one deducts essentially the non-earned revenue, that's actually a $1.4 million deficit, not a $72,000 deficit.
Well, it's not a 72, it's a surplus.
Of $72,000 over expenses. So basically the question before most of the people, half the people in University City, is does the golf course pay for itself in its operations?
Well, no, sir, not this year, it would not.
I'm sorry, ma'am.
It would not. Well, we have to
Operations, not minus capital.
It would still be close. Capital is $565,000. And then there is a transfer to the general fund of $325,000. So it's approximately $1 million almost. So there's a bit of a deficit, but you have to recognize too that the golf course is underestimating their revenue this year. They're trying to be conservative because they know that with the changes on the greens and the changes that are being done, that are going to be done to the parking lot, could affect their revenues. So they don't want to overestimate those revenues and this really just misrepresent it. So right now, the venue tax, which is what it was intended for, is being used for the golf course.
Does the city of Universal City have a business plan for the golf course that ensures long-term sustainability of the golf course by its earned income?
Well, no, sir, but we don't have a business plan really for the utility fund or the sewer fund either. They're all enterprise funds.
Yes, but those businesses pay for themselves by the revenues that they generate.
Right, but if you look at historically the golf course is now making money. It may not be meeting all of its obligations, but it's pretty close. Staff is doing an incredible job out there. And the venue tax was intended to be used for the golf course. That was the reason it was originally voted on.
Number one now, if you subtract the non-earned revenue for the golf course will show a deficit of $1.4 million. Number two, the improvements in the golf course have been funded principally by the venue tax. Principally by the venue tax.
Mr. Wall, I'm sorry, Councilmember Wall, I'm not debating whether or not the golf course is having to use the venue tax. It is. But again, that's what it was intended for. So at this point, if you look again 5-10 years back, the golf course now is earning money. They have paid every dime back to the general fund that they borrowed. So I guess I don't understand the contention where the golf course is concerned, because it is using the venue tax in the manner it was intended.
So let me understand this. You're saying it's paid back every bit of the money it was loaned. Do you have a history of the voters approving the $1.9 to $2.2 million that was loaned to the golf course during that period of time?
Sir, I don't have any history, unfortunately, but that came from my predecessor being a court record keeper, and that's something that I cannot change. What I can guarantee you is our staff now will be keeping records, financially and otherwise, and ensuring transparency to the citizens of this city. Again, the venue tax was originally intended to be used for the golf course, and that's what it's been used for.
And I'll add in that the use of general fund revenues in the past was presented to prior city councils within the budget process or the budget amendments, and they approved it. So nobody's sweeping anything under the rug, if that's what you're
They approved
insinuating.
it as a compromise solution for a potential change in the future. That's what they approved for, ma'am. Okay. Number two.
How can you speak that? How can you make that statement? How can you make that statement?
I sat out there.
You sit out there. Well, I was never compromised. Did you ever compromise?
Compromise.
That's what you said. We would compromise with a
compromise solution. That's what was presented. Compromise solution. The compromise solution was to present the information for repeal, essentially, or reallocation of the venue tax, which at one council meeting, every person on the dais agreed to do that, and then within 2 months, essentially, a legal gun was brought in and said, well, you can actually...
I guess reality checked in. So let's get back up to the 30,000 feet level, and you can discuss this.
Maybe I can give a larger overview of the venue tax and how it is identified within the overall budget for the golf course and the general fund. So the venue tax is estimated at $1.8 million. Well, you're gonna say, well, how can that be? I'm only seeing $1.1 million being transferred into the general and admin for the golf course. That is correct, because we took $650,000 of that and we put it in the Parks Department so that we can continue to do the park projects that we have on our list through our Parks Master Plan. So we've already taken a third of it away, right? So then we gave them the 1.1 million, but you have to understand that within this budget, you're only looking at the revenue. If you go down and look at the expenditures, you see of that 1.1 million, we're charging $325,000 for administrative expenses to the general fund. So now we've transferred out $325,000. So $1 million of that 1.8 million has already been removed from the golf course. Within the 800,000 that you have there, 600,000 of that is going towards capital improvements. And those capital improvements are the parking lot, which we postponed recently because we had to do the greens under an emergency repair. But it doesn't make the parking lot issue go away. In fact, it's only gotten worse because now we know we have the ADA issue that we have to accommodate because we had an ADA review. So we have to fix that. And then the other is that the building has not been painted on the outside or power washed, and the lighting has not been approved for at least 11 years. So of the monies that they have left, it is primarily 600,000 of it is going for capital improvements. That leaves approximately 200,000, do my math for me real quick, that is going toward other little small leases that they have for equipment. That is golf carts, and I apologize, Jeremy, your equipment has all kinds of weird names. I don't know what the leases are for his stuff. They all, different kinds of mowers. So that means 200,000 of it is going towards leases. So what they have going to them is so much smaller than what they had before, and they pick back all of their debt to the general fund. So I get it, it's not the absolute rosiest picture, but gosh darn, we've come a long way in a few years.
With the city
And can we
manager,
improve, Mr. Raval? The answer is yes. Are we going to try to work on that improvement? The answer is yes.
with
We
the
always
city,
want to improve.
would the city manager or the finance director define what an enterprise fund is, what an enterprise operation is within the city?
Sir, what do you think an enterprise fund is?
I'm sorry?
What is your understanding of an enterprise fund?
My understanding is that it is an operation that will pay for itself.
It's a business.
It's a business.
Similar to a business,
It's
yes,
a
sir.
business.
And the goal is absolutely to have revenues exceed expenditures. However, in this case, it's not right now. It will, but it's going to have to be given time.
Without a business plan.
That would be something that council would have to discuss, and then would have to be discussed with the city manager.
If the council gives us the direction that they want us to budget money in a future thing, to have an outside agency come in and do a business plan for the golf course, fine, we can do it. We can sit out an RFP and see what kind of responses we get back. But understand, if you're going to ask for that business plan, it's going to cost you money, and you're going to have to understand then again that you're wanting us to not spend money, but now you're asking us to spend money.
But, in the city of Austin, they have multiple golf courses. Some of their golf courses are funded as an enterprise fund. Some of them are absorbed into the general fund, so they're part of the general fund expenditures. We have that option too. It doesn't have to be identified as an enterprise fund.
That was the point of the debate at council before, that essentially could be identified as a general fund based on the priorities of the city, not based on dedicated fund to the golf course. And I remind the city manager that essentially we fired 2 golf course managers over a 10-year period that didn't meet expectations. Yet since the city has taken over golf course operations in 2005, essentially we have failed to meet the primary obligation to make the golf course pay for itself, and to bring up the fact that there are operational expenses that still have not been paid for, which emphasizes my point again.
Mr. Raval, I apologize, I don't understand what you're saying, that there are operational costs that are not being paid for.
Correct, it's being paid, it's essentially
No,
being.
sir. Everything that is the venue tax is being used for is capital purchase related, transfers to the general fund, or leases, which are also capital purchases. They're just not something that's purchased outright. They're a lease that has to be paid on an annual basis.
By earned income, by the revenue generated. Definition of what the enterprise business operation is.
Which is why I'm saying that it can also be handled through the general fund. What happened in past councils, I apologize, I was not here. I don't know what those conversations were.
But
All I can,
Mr. Ravel, I think it would help us a lot if you would identify exactly what you want our chief financial officer to say. Because what's your bottom line? What is it you're looking for?
The bottom line of what I'm looking for is our city manager in press has stated that the golf course has paid for itself in the last 4 years. Okay.
with the venue tax, yes, sir, which is what it's intended for.
which was not a stipulation. It was that the golf course would pay for itself, okay? From the rent, and the impression was that the city gave the people and the golf course supporters essentially that, oh man, we passed the threshold. We passed the threshold. It's paying for itself. For itself means with its earned income, okay? Earned income, paid for itself, including long-term sustainment expenses.
So you're saying,
Just like Elmo Trails does for the city of San Antonio.
are you saying that you want the golf course to be 100% self-supporting with no other income coming in whatsoever?
I would like the golf course to not only do that, but to contribute some money to the general fund.
But they do. Well, they will. But Mr. Councilmember Reval, I guess I don't understand what you're asking. Are you asking that we have the golf course not have the capital purchases? Are you asking that we get rid of staff that has tenure of 10 years plus? I guess I don't understand, so I'm trying to understand.
The core of what I'm asking is for consideration for the venue tax to be put on the ballot for the people to review for reallocation.
But that's not a discussion.
That's not a
here.
To allow it then to be used by
That's not a
future.
subject. Mr. Brooklyn, I'm not, all right.
She asked, and I'm responding. She asked what I would like.
That is not a subject. I mean, it's a workshop. That is something that you guys can answer offline. And if it's needed to bring forward to a future council meeting, we can bring it to a future council meeting. This is here to work the budget for the upcoming year, and that is not going to solve that problem for this year.
With the recognition, Mr. Mayor, that there is no business plan currently that the city has for sustaining the golf course.
You do realize the budget is a business plan, don't you? Do you not realize that?
The budget is a business
A
plan.
budget is a part of the business plan, and we're trying to do that. And without a budget, you cannot operate with a business plan.
So basically, the business plan is to sustain the golf course with venue tax for the rest of your life and my life.
Those are your words.
That's what's in the budget.
Those are your words, sir. I mean,
This is a topic that divides the residents. They have to know, they have to know what the honest earned income of the golf course is and whether it can sustain itself, yes or no.
they will know it. We have transparency, they will know that. And they can voice their opinions. Funny, out of 100 people I meet on the trails, they love the golf course. And I'm not a golfer.
And so do the people from the outside world, when they realize that 40% of every drink at the bar is paid for out of Universal City.
That is wrong.
Tax money.
That is wrong. It can't be because by federal law, you cannot use outside and buy alcohol for people.
It's supported by the venue tax.
No,
The
it's not.
operation is supported by the venue tax.
He said,
Every
she
round of
said,
golf is supported by the venue
he
tax.
said, she said.
Every wedding venue is supported by the
Would you
venue
like to be in the weeds or you want to get back up to 30,000 feet, Mr. Rebel?
I would like to see that $180,000 moved to the general fund so that council can
This is
apply it
not
to
the
the
place for
priorities.
that. I'm sorry, this is not the place for that.
It's a budget workshop, sir.
It is a budget workshop, and this is not, it takes council action, and we're not here voting tonight.
Fair enough, sir. Fair enough.
We owe the courtesy to the department heads to present what they need and give them the courtesy to present their needs. And if we cannot do that, it's not a workshop either. My apologies, but we need to move on.
Thank you.
So is there any other questions related to the golf course? Okay, well, in that case, we can continue down the revenues again. So the other revenues, I can't see from here, but it says green fees. Green fees were estimated to be just a bit more than they were this fiscal year. Again, thank you. The budgets that were provided by the golf course staff, they were trying to be as conservative as possible with their revenues, knowing that they may not have as much activity, at least for the first few months, while the greens are repairing. And so I would think that they would probably exceed their revenue projections, but I understand their need to be conservative in what they're projecting. And overall, their budgets are solid budgets. I don't understand the contention of the issue with it, but if we go to carts does not have any revenue, they just have expenses, and I believe what's budgeted in here is the cart staff that, cart repair, cart staff, thank you. And then the cart leases that are involved with the golf course. The pro shop projections are a little bit lower as well because they are trying to, again, be conservative to ensure that they meet the revenue projections that they've provided. And within the pro shop, that's really all I have to say is that they've estimated their revenues to be just slightly over what they are right now. I do know that there'll be a review of their green fees, and that could make changes to the revenues as well, but the projections are lower than what I think they should be, but I have to defer to them because I know that they're the experts in their fields. Range fees were based to be the exact same revenue as last year, and then their expenses are only $20,000. Okay, so food and beverage. Food and beverage have projected their revenues to be again conservative, a little bit lower than they projected for this fiscal year. And again, it's related to the greens and the golfers that they anticipate to have come in. Then the only real change within their budget was furniture and fixtures. They're making some purchases they had not made in the previous fiscal year, and that's approximately $18,000. And their supplies are a little higher, about 3% higher, because again, the price of everything is going up. And then that's it for there's marketing, which $129,000 from the hotel motel tax is being transferred in order for them to market ticket heads and beds, which will also bring revenue back to the city because when heads are in beds, then we get the hotel motel tax. And that's the golf course.
And that includes on their marketing, individual marketing that we do, but it also includes some of the shared marketing programs that we have with the Marriott Hotel on I-35. So we coordinate very heavily with them. They call it stay and play programs, and we call it play and stay. It's just a reverse, but it's the same program that we both marketed. I know that in the individual meetings, a couple of times it came up and it was talking about, well, how often do we actually raise the prices on green fees and on food and beverage? So I'm just going to kind of put Katie and Sal. Oh, Sal, we'll let you go first. Why don't you talk about how you go about determining what your green fee needs to be and how often you reassess that, if you don't mind, just as a form of education.
Well, we have several golf courses that we feel that we're very similar to, as for instance, Silverhorn, Canyon Springs, the Bandit, and there's other couple of golf courses within the city. So we constantly keep up with them to see what numbers they are selling the green fees for. And we try to stay right below them because I don't want to sell us outside the market and charge too much. Moving into this year, it's kind of, we're stepping into the unknown a little bit with our new greens, but the trend is everybody is charging close to $100 green fees from the kind of golf courses that we feel that we're compared to. We give the same kind of amenities they do, so I'm looking upwards to around $80, $85 once the greens get, in play and ready to go. So part of what Christine was saying, that us being conservative, the first couple of months, first 6 months, I want to make sure that the greens are, grown in nicely. So I'm going to spread the tee times out a little bit. So I'm not wanting to flood the golf course right off the bat. So, but typically we just kind of, keep up with the Joneses, kind of speak, and just kind of do, a spreadsheet and call all the time to find out what the rates, not just for green fees, but what they do for memberships, what they do for juniors, how they run tournaments and stuff like that.
On some of the other courses, I know we have, it seems to be like we have a lot of specials for like seniors and UC residents. Do these other courses that you compare yourself with have those unique price points as well?
They do. We run one of the ones that they don't do anymore is called a Super Twilight, which they run real late at night. Some of these courses are getting rid of that, but they all offer military rates, senior rates. Obviously, we're so close to Randolph, we're definitely going to run military rates. And definitely UC rates, junior rates, 9-hole rates, stuff like that. So it's not just a one green fee for everybody. There's different prices.
And do you think that if you did away with all of those special rates, military, senior, UC residents, that it would impact the amount of golfers that you got?
100%. We pretty much get blacklisted basically. UC members don't get a discount, UC residents don't get a discount, and then that's another reason it's not like the golf course, and then military, yes. We definitely have to give those rates out.
Okay, I appreciate it, thank you.
So.
Oh, Sal, I'm sorry, what, a question?
May I ask? Yes. The double-edged sword hole, how many of your golfers are from outside of Universal City, approximately? What percentage?
Approximately about 90-95%.
So essentially, 90 to 95% are outside of Universal City and basically have the advantage of a lower green fee. As you say, $100 versus $85, I think is what you said. Okay. So basically, that's a 15% discount, okay, for green fees for 90% of your people, or whatever you said. Okay.
If they're all regular players, yes. But some of them are seniors, so that rate will drop. Some of them are military service, some of them first.
What does the average round of golf cost here, average round of cost for somebody that's not a resident?
So I'll give you this, our average green fee for this year, up until we started losing our greens back in April, we were at $39 average. So you put all of it in the pot, divided by the number of players, we were at 39 and with some change after that.
And approximately what is the average for Alamo Trails?
It's very hard to say because there's so many different type of golf courses. They have a Part B course as part of them, so that green fee would go down. But we're probably right in the middle of what they charge. There's Bracker Ridge and some of those other courses are a lot more expensive than we are.
And each of those courses are profitable by their earned income, is that correct?
That I don't know. I have no clue.
Okay, thank you.
Sal, I have a question. Of the 90% of residents, non-residents using the golf course of the green fees, if you were to raise the golf course of the green fees by 15%, what would the percentage be from that?
Well, they would probably say
out of town, city.
Oh, that percentage would drop greatly. They would probably stay in their area to play golf. So that $15 that I'm saving, if that's the number I'm gonna go with, is getting them to get out of San Antonio area to come to our golf course. And so I feel like that's
And the same with Austin and New Braunfels and Seguin and all.
We get a lot of golf from Austin, a lot of golf from Houston because it's close I-10s.
So again, we're essentially offering, according to your words, the out-of-town golfers a discount rate compared to their local golfers.
Not at all.
No, that's not what he
I have
said.
no clue what their local golf course is charging. My theory is that I want to make sure our green fee rates, are very compatible to other courses, and we are very, and we're proud of our golf course, obviously, but we don't want to overprice it to where nobody comes out there. So if I charge $100 just like Canyon Springs, they have different amenities that we don't, so that golfer's going to stay closer to their area. there's more golfer population in that area versus where we are at this moment. My job is to get those golfers to come to here, so I have to provide something. Me charging $80 is not a discount. I don't know what other golf courses charge, as in Houston, Austin, that way. I know the courses that I feel like we're similar to, so I can't really answer that question.
Well, I guess the bottom line is the fee structure doesn't quite match the expenses to operate your end of the golf course operations.
It does.
It does. The fee structure meets all the expenses in this proposed budget.
Not all
The
expenses,
answer is
because
no.
there's food and beverage in there as well and everything.
Well, the answer is no. No, the answer is that you're not going to $3 million or whatever short.
It's basically we're the golf side portion of it, so I can't say
That's fair. That's fair.
covers all of it.
Okay. You understand my point, though?
Not exactly, but.
We're subsidizing outsiders golf.
No, but that's not what he said. He said that we know who our competitors are in the area. We know the amenities that they have, which are much better, much higher quality, more amenities, and people will pay $100 to go to them. So if we want to attract the $100 player to UC Golf Course, which has less amenities and less attractiveness for it, how do we get it here? Well, we get them here by we reduce the rate a little bit so they think, oh, Olympia Hills, yeah, for the amenities they have, it's worth $80 or $85. Let's go there today, instead of going to play our usual $100 course.
Could you identify some of the amenities
That we have or that they have?
that they offer?
A lot of it comes with, when you park, somebody will come get your golf clubs. They will valet services, stuff like that. A man's locker room, well, I say man's locker room, but locker rooms, this range balls are included in the green fees. There's other kind of little things like that. But the main ones are obviously the ambiance of the golf course. As you pull in, some of these La Cantera golf courses, they're real beautiful, things like that. So those are the kind of amenities that I'm kind of talking about. Little things like towels in the carts, we can do that stuff. But again, we're trying to make sure that we're not spending a whole lot of money to get off the top.
Right, we're at a price point to draw them in, but not necessarily at a price point where we're pricing ourselves out of the market for them not looking at us at all. And I'm sorry, golfers are snobby in a lot of regards. I'm looking at, wanted to make sure Mayor Williams wasn't here before. Maybe he is back there. They're very particular about what they want and what they like and what they expect. And they expect a lot of amenities and very, very high service. They expect the grass on the greens to be exactly like the grass that's on the putting green. They have these expectations because, you know, like if you're a basketball player or if you're a soccer player and your kids are in club, you go to all different type of amenities and they all have their favorite places and they'll pay more to go to a nicer place than they will to come to a semi-nice place. We compete against that. And so, you know, we have to make ourselves as attractive as we can to bring them to our particular place.
Yes, ma'am, and if you can do that at a profit, an earned profit, that would be wonderful.
And that's the goal.
20-year goal.
It's always been the goal.
We're doing our best, so.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Sal, I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
So my name's Katie, I'm the Director of Food and Beverage for the golf course, and I want to first I know there's a lot of tension, and I think that we work really hard. There's not one day that we're not talking about how we can make more money and how we can profit and how we can cut expenses. So it's an ongoing process that we have. And so I have kind of a three-part different target audience. I have my weddings, I have our golfers, and then I have our non-golfers who use the food and beverage department. And so starting off with golfers, the way that I price point for the question being asked is we do increase prices every year, and so we'll see if we need to do a price increase halfway through the year. But every year we do consistently go up in our food and beverage pricing. I can tell you last year our average per golfer per spend was $10.12 per round. With the greens, the way that they've been, it's been really challenging, and we finished quarter two at $6.92. So we're $4 less per golfer. Golfers are going down, and then they're also not spending as much. So a lot of the revenues that I projected, it was very conservative. I like thinking, okay, how is it gonna play out? Wish we could have that crystal ball and say, okay, yeah, we've got this many golfers, but that's not the case. But I think with the plan that we have in place with changing the new greens, I definitely think that that's going to increase our revenues, what I have projected on here, quite significantly. If I'm not mistaken, food and beverage profited, I think it was like it was over $100,000 last year. I think it was like close to 150. And so that department is making money. It is profitable on that end. Weddings have gone down, so you have seen like a little tick, a decrease on that. So there's a lot of play in that area. You know, I've been trying to figure that out. What's everybody else doing that's in our area too? And so pretty much nationwide, that is a consistency on there. There's a lot of different contributions for that. So there's an election year. A lot of times there's an uncertainty with the economy, and so that's having people hold off on a year. Then there's also the fact that COVID boom is over. Everybody that had kind of paused and had that COVID wedding that they had like postponed, they all got married that last fiscal year, so that was nice. And then we're also seeing that, so the KNOT has been tracking worldwide jewelers and everything, and figuring out engagement rings are also on a decrease, and they contribute that to everybody that was single during COVID, stay single for that year or 2 years, and then now average engagement year is like 3 years before they get engaged. So hopefully that will pick back up too. And so a lot of that was conservative on there, but so that's kind of where we left off. But we've increased our pricing. You have to. You're in food and beverage. The price of food going to the grocery store is expensive, so everything has to go from that.
You have an automatic escalation for year to year for your room rentals, correct?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
So on the room rentals, because we know that sometimes people will book a room and not get married for 3 years. So on the room rental rate, we have if you're getting married this year rate, if you're getting the next year rate, and if you're getting married 3 years out, this is what your room rental is going to be. So the further out they go, the higher the room rental rate is for them. And we started doing that, 4 or 5 years ago,
Yeah.
I think.
And then we also have in our contract too with food pricing too, because we just don't know what that will be.
Right.
So
if they pick their menu now and it's $20 per person, we know based on food cost escalations that it's built into their contract that if they get married 2 years from now, guess what? It's probably going to end up being $22 a person. So all of that.
Or we can fit something in their budget too, right? So we can say, okay, yes, we're going to price it at $25. The options that we have on the menu might not be what you will get, but we'll fit something in that.
May I ask a very stupid question? And what is COGS food?
Cost of goods. Cost of goods,
Okay,
yes,
okay,
sorry.
cost of goods, okay,
Yes.
thanks. Thank you.
So,
I was trying to figure out how to work it. Yeah, thank you.
Is that good?
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Oh, yes, ma'am. What percentage of time is the convention center hall, I'll call it the hall, used?
Oh, gosh.
So basically, when I did the analysis 2 years ago, it was approximately 46 to 49% of the dates.
The days that we have.
You know, type thing. And approximately a third of those were for conventions, roughly a third wedding, a third for personal sort of things, roughly. So basically, how utilized is the hall/reception area?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I can try to answer it the best that I can. And so we have, and I think you're probably right on where we have a third percent that we have our weddings, a third percent are luncheons and business organizations, and then 30% would be celebrations and birthday parties, quinceañeras, retirement celebrations, Christmas parties. I know, like, I'd have to go back and exactly say, like, if we have so many days out of the year, how many rentals that we have, I would say maybe 50%, but that would be something I'd have to get back. Yeah, I was like, I don't want to be quoted on that.
Close enough to the number that I came up with 2 years ago. So essentially, we're currently using what we'll call the hall 50% of the time.
Of the days of, yes.
Thank you.
Which is, interestingly enough, when we've been meeting with the marketing team from the hotel, they have the same issue that we do, and that everybody wants to do everything on a Friday and a Saturday. And yeah, all brides want to get married on a Friday or a Saturday. Some of them will get married on a Sunday. Retirement parties happen on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Everybody wants everything to happen on the weekends. And so that's why the lunches and the meetings that we have out there are important, even though we don't always make a lot of money on them because, lunch is not as expensive as dinner. But they are a lot of the filler that we have, as well as the golf tournaments that we have that utilize that room as well.
Yeah, and we have a wedding, we have a wedding this evening out of the golf course, and so we do have, try to pick up the Monday through Thursday rentals for a lower price and trying to utilize that more. But we did pretty significantly increase our pricing, and funny enough, I think we bring in as much revenue as we did, but we're doing less events for it. But, when I first started, I think the room rental was $300. Now it's $6,000 to rent the room. So there's like a pretty good jump in that we've done that.
Yes. It's just a comment because I've been around for a long time and hang out at the golf course. This is the hardest working group. You all work so hard and you do so many thinking out of the box. You went through COVID. And all of a sudden, you figured out how to have happy hour, having people drive through and giving food. You gave food to, people who really couldn't afford it. Every time there's a slump, you guys get together and you come up with some magnificent way to bring the people back in and bring normalcy back in. But I've seen you be high and low and medium, and you're always looking for the new way to keep your revenue up. With the greens going down and the bars, you weren't serving as much beer and everything. You all, again, came up with something else that just encouraged everybody to make more money. And I applaud you. I don't think a lot of people understand how you're constantly having to redesign what your job is. And I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's definitely, thank you. That's a nice comment to hear. And I also want to say, we've had a lot of transparency with Christine because the numbers are coming in, and I think with that transparency with Mateo and Christine, then we're able to go from that large deficit to we're closing the gap, and that's what the whole goal is, right? We want to be profitable. I think Sal and I and Jeremy, more than anybody in this room, we want to be successful in what we do, and so we're closing that gap, and we're trying to get there, and we've had meetings, and we can sit down, and we have our own business plan. But we'd be open to whatever, and so I think,
And I know Katie brought up the three of them because, I think sometimes people don't understand that each one of them comes with their own unique talents and gift and expertise. Katie, I'm just going to make the assumption you don't know much about course and grounds.
Absolutely not. I don't know about sprigging or the backhoe.
And I'm going to bet that Jeremy knows nothing about figuring out cost of goods and your margin profit for food and beverage section. And Sal, what do you know about food and beverage? Yeah.
Just tasting.
And so, yes, you have to have all of those expertise and experience and tenure to know how to make it work. The other thing that I think is maybe sometimes hard for people to grasp is how long they're open. My goodness, right? Some of us, we work our 8-hour shift, and I apologize. I know that none of you know what an 8-hour shift is, and I thank you for that. So I know that Jeremy and his staff are there as early as 4 a.m. And when Katie and her staff are closing down, it can be sometimes as late as 1
2 in the
o'clock,
morning,
2
yeah.
o'clock in the morning. So, it's pretty close to a 24-hour operation. They get a very short period of time when things aren't happening, but from really early in the morning till really late at night, there's something happening.
Well, and there's been huge events going on, and you've got the golf, you've got the tournaments going, you've got happy hour, and there she is giving tours for weddings. So they're constantly, doing 3 and 4 things at once. And it's not just you. I want to bring up all of these departments. You've worked hard to put all of these budgets together. It's not whimsical. Then you come and sit down with Christine and Ms. Turner and go over what works, what doesn't work, what do you need, what can we do without. So when I'm looking at this, I'm realizing there's already been a lot of cuts. There's already been a lot of edits going on. So this isn't just, let's sit down and do it. You're putting down the things you need, and you've discussed with staff how you can work that through. And I do appreciate all of it, because I know how much work you put into it.
And I'll add the word, yes, they discussed it with us, but the word that they really don't like to hear, I'm going to Christine on this one, is justify it. Break it down, show me the detail, prove it to me. And, that's a good thing to ask people.
I like that word.
What?
I like that word.
You like that word. So, thank you, Katie, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That's it?
Anything else?
Anything else? Any final questions from the council?
Oh, hi.
Is there a prize for the thing? Because I can ask a lot more
There's a tray of
questions.
cookies in there.
Okay, I'll need that.
I need 14 more minutes.
Well,
So let me maybe just finish up by saying again, thank you to all of you, thank you to all of the department heads, thank you to Christine and Mateo. I think philosophically, I like to believe it's not a staff versus council situation, right? We're all in the same team. We all want the same goal. We all want to provide things to our residents and the services that they need, and they deserve and they expect. Every now and then, yes, we do need a little bit more to get that done. But again, I would like for us to leave to understand that we're all on the same team, and it's not an us against them, it's us together. And together, with feedback from you and the feedback that we've given you, that we do it every year for 60-some years, we come out with a budget and a tax rate, and the majority of people are happy. And I'm assuming we can do the same thing again this year.
and we've gone from 15,000 to 21,000 in the last 12 years.
Yes, sir.
So we need to
People are
take
still
care of it.
moving here.
It is 7:58.
Darn it.
2-1.
I had 7:55 and Katie kept
It was me. I was trying to get to 8:13. Oh, well.
Unofficially, off the time of the clock, I really do want to thank staff for all the work that they do. And I very much apologize for my lateness today.
We appreciate it, Mr. Riddell. We know, I would say without a doubt, we all understand.
Yes. And I called you. It's too late for the news. I think you might be driving. Well, I can take this. 5 years.